Welcome to Amateur Redneck Workshop. I'm Harold, and we're getting within a couple of weeks of finishing up the plasma cutter. I got a lot of things to do this week that are going to stop work at today, and I'll take up the work again next week sometime. And who knows how much progress we'll make, but I figure it'll take a couple of weeks. I still haven't come up with a CAM software package. And so all the G code I'll be doing to cut with here will be stuff that I put together myself, because I don't have any plasma G code right now, so that'll be all right. It'll work fine, and that'll do for testing. And in G code you can make the thing cut arcs and circles and straight lines and all stuff, and if you know that, that's pretty much a test of it right there. In fact, I don't even have the metal to cut yet, so we're going to get on with that too. Cutting the grid, I had to go down to Steel Supply and I bought two 4x8 sheets of 14 gauge steel, and I asked the guy how much it cost for him to cut them up into strips. $10 first cut, $5 each cut, and I thought, whoa, that'll come out to about twice the price of steel. Steel itself was $70. So I came home and I went through a pile of different blades and cut the stuff on the table saw, and used up what blades I had around here. And then I went to Harbor Freight and bought a metal cutting blade, which I almost used up on the table saw. And in all fairness to the metal cutting blade, the table saw runs a lot faster than it should, so I was running the blade too fast. It still cuts, it's just a lot duller than when I started. I guess that this is getting close to like I say, the end of the project. I was watching a movie last night. Now I don't hear all that good, and it's something that runs in the family. Never have heard all that good. Back in the 80s, when I went to work for the Evil Equipment Refinery, we had this Dr. King, whose bedside manner consisted of not coming right out and telling you you're going to die right off. He'd wait a few seconds. But anyway, he did my physical, and he says, well, you can't see and you can't hear. So he says, you better wear your PPE, personal protective equipment. And I hadn't got any better over the years. But I've noticed that when I watch television, watch movies and such, any movies made after 90 or 95, somewhere along in there, they're really hard for me to understand the dialogue, because they got the background music at least as loud as the actors talking, if not louder, and they'll go right like that all the time the actors are talking. Now the old movies made before 1990, from 1910 up, I can understand everything the actors say, and those just fine. It's perfect. But they had a change of style somewhere in the 90s and wiped out movies for me, I can't hear a darn thing you're saying. If I can't hear it, I don't care what they're doing. So the boss lady watches the movie, and I play, Minesweeper on the PC. All right, let's get on with the project. I forgot. Some people had wanted to see me use the scissor lift I made, and so I'm going to throw that in along with, mainly it'll probably be the scissor lift that the video's about. It was a real convenience to be able to lift the oven up and get it higher than the hole and shove it over in there. It's always easier to go downhill. And when I had to take it back out of the hole multiple times, it was a whole lot easier to drop the lift down a little bit, and pull the oven out of there. Bad part about the scissor lift was I made the joints too tight, so I had to crank it up by hand and crank it down by hand. That drill couldn't handle it. Everybody could handle going down, it just couldn't handle going up. We'll take a look at that first before we look at the plasma table. Somebody wanted to see this thing in use, so I'm just going to turn on the camera and set it back here and try to slide the oven out.
Well, if you have that thing going to fall up, you'll have to delete me saying you don't listen.
Before you go using a meter like this, you want to plug it in the wall to see if it works. You never know. Well, there we are. It's got electricity. It's not real good in the hole. It was reading 122 when I push it up. Good and tight. There, you see? But at least I know the meter works. Gotta move it out of the way. Well, I didn't run the camera any for the installation of the new oven. There's the old one sitting in the floor. And here's the way I put the new oven on there was that I let this thing down, you know, to the bottom. I took the doors off the new oven and just kind of walked it back and forth up on there, and then, you know, walked it back and forth to get it up on the platform there. And then I rolled it in there by the hole and stuck it in. Of course, in between that, I'll show you. Before I got into putting the new oven on the scissor lift and putting it in there, you can see I've got a little door to replace down at the bottom still. This oven was actually 5 inches taller and 1/4 inch wider than the old one. I had overlooked the 1/4 inch wider part. But anyway, I took that false frame off of there. There really is a cabinet up there in the top behind those doors, but the rest of that's just a little framework around the hole. I took that off and laid it on the scissor lift and cut the hole another 5 inches further down. And then I loaded the oven on the scissor lift and came in here. The lift was good in that it held the oven and moved it and made it easy for me to slide it into the hole. But the bad part about the scissor lift is my joints are too tight and I had to crank it up by hand. The drill just couldn't handle the load, and it's just tough. I mean, when I wanted to go down, it'd crank down real easy, but not going up. But when I started trying to put the thing in, I discovered that I was a 1/4 inch too narrow. And I'd pull it out and I would cut off about 1/16 of an inch and shove it back in. Decided it's still not wide enough, take it out. I must have pulled it in and out of there 6 or 7 times or 8 before I finally got the hole wide enough. And then of course I got it all mounted back except for the little door in the bottom. This thing had a shelf in the bottom of it, 1/2 inch plywood shelf, and I had to reach up in that hole in the bottom and pound the thing loose. The carpenter that had put the cabinets in, he stapled that piece of plywood down as if it was going to hold the whole world in place. I went back, and then the piece of plywood was drive it in with a hammer tight in the walls, and I cut about 1/16 of an inch off the side of the plywood. Now I can just slip it in and set it down, and I didn't nail it down or screw it down or nothing. It's just laying on top of the brackets that hold it up, and it's not going anywhere. Obviously the oven's screwed down, it's installed, and everything's great. It was just too much work to drag out the camera. I worked on this from probably 2:30 to about 9 o'clock or a little after, so you know that was enough for me. Now then all I got to do is, like I said, I got to put the little door back on there. Right here's something I know that some of you guys are going to be interested in. I've looked at this stuff for 3 or 4 years and finally gave in to it. Want to know what size bolt it is? This guy has got it. Look at this. We go on this end from a 632. I hope you can see that. I'm going to turn the little viewfinder over. From a 632 up here to a 3/4 16. Nuts, bolts. There's even some nice little holes here for screw checking. Really small screws. And if you get the whole thing, you go from a little, what's that, 4mm, I think it is. You go all the way up here to 16mm on this other end. And you see that, all right, there's 16mm nut bolt all the way down here to 4mm on this end. So there you are. It's about $80. I'll leave a link to it for you. I did it through Amazon, even though Amazon had for several months there had me banned from doing reviews on Amazon. I don't know why, what I did wrong. It just said when I logged on that I couldn't make a review because I had violated community policy. And so I asked them why, and they never answered. And then here the other day they reinstated me, all without any reason or rhyme or anything. And it kind of irritated me, and I got to looking around and I discovered you can get free shipping on stuff you order from Walmart, and you don't have to buy a $100 and something membership every year. So I may be on my last Amazon Prime membership. You know, it's just no way to treat somebody that didn't say anything bad about anybody. Although I was going to say something bad about the guy I was going to do the review on. Not real bad, but certainly disapproving of his product. But I guess that's neither here nor there. Those are pretty handy. I wanted those things for years, and now I got them. Well, that's the little grid for holding the metal. Somehow I miscounted and came up short 3 slats. But I've got this thing right here. This one that I made, with an abrasive disc on the table saw. And if you'll look, you can see that it's not straight. You know, it come down here and it's got it swerved off and narrower at one end than the other. And I thought, well, this is useless. But I think what I'll do is I'll clean all the stuff off, deburr it, measure from this side, the good side, and then cut up to those marks from the other side. It doesn't matter if, you know, if this side doesn't really go all the way down, you know, right here, if it didn't go all the way down, because, you know, it's on the bottom. So it won't matter if it's level down there or not, just the top. So that'll be my strategy here. I'm going to get out the angle grinder and clean all the burrs off, and then I'll start marking it with a magic marker and a tri-square. If I had thought about it, I could have cut all the notches that go downwards with this saw, and it would have been faster and a lot more pleasant. The difference between this saw and the table saw throws the chips at you. This guy throws the chips the other direction. That's one important difference. And this guy's running at the right speed for a metal cutting blade. I went to Harbor Freight and I got a metal cutting blade and put on the table saw. And right at first, it made beautiful cuts. You know, it just like a knife through butter. And pretty soon, though, it started dulling out and started leaving, you know, it'd make a red hot mark through the metal as I cut through it. So you know, that obviously I was running it too fast and it was dulling out pretty quick. Now this guy should be 3 inches wide, but he's only 2.5. That's how it came out. So I'm going to cut down in it just enough so that this black mark here, this is 1.5 inches from here. That should leave this top being level with the top over there on the little grid, and it'll just have a little less hanging down. So I'm not going to do video of me cutting this. You guys have seen me slice plenty of important size metal with this saw. I'm not sure how it's going to take to this, because this is sheet metal and it's probably going to rattle and jerk and all that a lot, standing up on edge like that. You know, the evolution guys say to cut your metal laying flat. And I may be able to lay this flat and just drop the saw down through it. I'll experiment with it and I'll let you know how it comes out. I can't lay the metal down flat because the saw starts cutting about the middle of it if I do. But this works out really good. I thought I'd go ahead and show you slicing one piece of it. You see how wonderful it is. Much better than doing it on the table saw. Isn't that nice? That was great. Okay, I'll go over the rest of it myself. The long-awaited torch from overseas arrived yesterday. It won't do, so I'm going to use the torch that came with the plasma cutter. And since it lays out backwards into things, that end down there won't be used anyway. That's where the torch handle will come down and interfere with things, so that ought to be good enough for grid to hold things up. Now, of course, I've got to make the pieces that sets on. We'll take a look over here. As you can see, the torch handle is going to stick back this way, and he'll come back a ways, but the handle part of it right there, the trigger part, is going to interfere with this, and there's nothing I can do about that, so we'll just let it come down to about, you know, till that thing comes about here, and that'll be the limit. That's good enough. I'm going to only cut a few small things with this anyway, so that's the way it's got to be. Alright, now I've got to put a support underneath there to hold that grid, and that means I got to do a lot of measuring and thinking and other things that rednecks aren't accustomed to, and then we'll get her done. So one morning, Bobby Sue got up on the wrong side of the bed, and she gave Bubba a hard time all morning. She gave him a hard time at lunch. Nothing Bubba could do was right. She just gave him a hard time all day long. Long toward evening, Bubba just about had all he could stand. He says, you know, he says, you remind me of my ex-wife. She jumped up and says, well, what do you mean? You never told me you was married before. Bubba says, I wasn't. Well, that's all, folks. Y'all try to subscribe if you're not already a subscriber. Leave a comment if you got something to say. And above all, remember, keep on keeping on. Bye now.